In Ukraine, some machines are being sent to the front line not because they are stronger than humans, but because they can be lost instead of humans. That is what makes UGVs a much bigger story than just another new type of robot. On a battlefield covered by drones, mines, and artillery, danger does not only appear when the shooting starts. It exists in every meter that has to be crossed. But Ukraine is now beginning to push part of that risk onto remotely controlled ground robots. If this trend continues, the real change will not only be the tools used on the battlefield. The real change will be how Ukraine decides who or what must enter the danger zone first. So why is Ukraine expanding UGVs so quickly? Which missions are being handed to robots first? And what does this reveal about how dangerous the Ukrainian battlefield has become for every human movement? Let's find out with military force. Ukraine is expanding unmanned ground vehicles because the front line has become too dangerous for basic movements. This is not only about new military technology. It is about survival in a battlefield where a short trip can become a target the moment it begins. A supply team may only need to move ammunition across a road. A scout group may only need to check a tree line. A medical team may only need to reach a wounded soldier. But in Ukraine, those movements can be seen by drones, slowed by mines, and hit by artillery before troops arrive. That is why UGVs are becoming more important. They are being used for transport, supply, reconnaissance, evacuation, mine work, and frontline combat support. Ground robots are no longer only rear area experiments. They are being pulled into the same battlefield system that already includes FPV drones, reconnaissance UAVs, artillery, mines, and electronic warfare. The reason is clear. Ukraine cannot treat every dangerous movement as a job for infantry when drones are watching roads, field paths, and approach routes. Danger no longer begins only at direct contact. It can begin much earlier. A vehicle leaving cover can be tracked. A soldier crossing open ground can be followed. A rescue team can be targeted because it must stop long enough to help someone. This turns roads, forest edges, ruined village approaches, and supply paths into target corridors. UGVs give Ukraine a way to place a machine into those corridors before placing a soldier there. The first role of UGVs is not to replace the whole fighting force. Their first role is more practical. They take over repeated tasks that are dangerous, predictable, and costly in human terms. A robot can move supplies. It can test a route. It can carry equipment. It can help evacuate the wounded. It can reduce how often soldiers expose themselves for work that must be done repeatedly. Modern war is not only decided by major assaults, it is also shaped by who can keep moving, resupplying, evacuating, and observing under constant threat. For Ukraine, this is a manpower issue as much as a technology issue. Every soldier saved from predictable danger can remain available for missions that still require human judgment and control. A damaged robot can be repaired or replaced. A trained soldier is much harder to replace in a long war of attrition. So the first meaning of Ukraine's UGV expansion is not a future without infantry. It is a battlefield where Ukraine is trying to remove soldiers from the most exposed movements before the real fight begins. From that need to reduce risk in every movement, Ukraine is now testing something more ambitious, sending robots into missions that once belonged mostly to infantry assault. The Kharkiv operation matters because it showed a different way to retake a position. Instead of sending infantry directly into the most exposed stage of the fight, Ukraine used unmanned ground vehicles and drones to carry much of the early burden. This was not a normal supply task. It was a combat mission in which machines helped approach the position, shape the battlefield, and reduce the need for Ukrainian soldiers to move first. President Volodymyr Zelensky described an operation in Kharkiv Oblast where a Russian position was taken with drones and ground robotic systems, without infantry losses on the Ukrainian side. That detail changes the way the operation should be understood. The main point is not that robots suddenly made infantry useless. The point is that Ukraine found a way to push machines into the most dangerous opening phase, where soldiers would normally face the highest risk. In this kind of mission, the first minutes can decide everything. The attacking force must find the approach route, test enemy reaction, identify firing points, and avoid mines or prepared kill zones. If infantry does all of that first, losses can come before the position is even reached. UGVs can change that sequence. They can move into the approach zone while aerial drones watch from above. They can carry sensors, equipment, explosives, or weapons into places where a soldier would be exposed. They can force the defending side to react, reveal movement, or shift fire toward a machine instead of a human target. That gives Ukrainian commanders more information before committing people. It also gives infantry a better chance to enter later under improved conditions, rather than walking into an unknown space. The Kharkiv case points to a wider change in assault logic. For decades, ground assaults depended on infantry accepting the first physical risk. Drones had already changed the air above the battlefield, but UGVs are now starting to change the ground in front of the soldier. In this model, aerial drones and ground robots do different jobs. The drone sees the area, tracks enemy reaction, and helps guide the operation. The UGV moves through the terrain, reaches closer to the position, and brings a physical presence that a drone cannot provide. That combination is powerful because visibility and movement are joined together. A drone can observe a trench line, but it cannot occupy ground. A UGV cannot understand the whole battlefield by itself, but it can move into danger under remote control. Together, they create a new first layer of attack. The key lesson is not that one machine wins the battle alone. The lesson is that machines can prepare the ground before infantry has to appear. That matters in Ukraine because the enemy is also watching. If a soldier enters too early, he may be detected by drones, trapped by mines, or hit by artillery before the assault develops. If a robot enters first, the same danger still exists, but the cost of failure changes. A destroyed UGV is a loss of equipment. A destroyed assault team is a loss of trained people, experience, and combat power. This is why Kharkiv should be seen as more than one successful mission. It is a test of a new ground assault model. In that model, humans still decide, coordinate, and hold the position when needed. But they no longer have to be the first body exposed to every minefield, trench approach, and drone-watched route. Ukraine is not removing infantry from war. It is trying to move infantry out of the opening moments where losses are most likely and information is weakest. But if robots can go first in a recapture mission, the next question becomes larger. How much of the infantry's most dangerous work can Ukraine hand over to machines in the long term? Ukraine's long-term goal is not to remove infantry from the battlefield. It is to change where infantry is used, when it is exposed, and which tasks are worth risking trained soldiers for. A robot cannot fully replace a soldier who must read terrain, judge a complex situation, control a position, or make decisions under pressure. But a robot can take on the first layer of danger. It can test a route, it can carry equipment, it can draw attention, it can take damage where a human loss would be far more serious. Some Ukrainian units are looking at UGVs as part of a wider effort to reduce the burden on infantry. Some Ukrainian commanders have described a goal of replacing around 30% of infantry tasks with unmanned ground systems. That number shows a realistic ambition. Ukraine is not trying to build an army made only of machines. It is trying to separate tasks that require human judgment from tasks that mainly expose soldiers to predictable danger. Infantry is still needed for the hardest human parts of war. Soldiers must still secure ground, read unclear battlefield signals, work with nearby units, and react when communication fails or terrain changes. A robot can follow commands, carry a load, move through a route, and support a position, but it cannot fully replace a trained soldier's judgment in a confused fight. The future Ukraine is testing is not a future without infantry. It is a future where infantry becomes more selective, more protected, and more focused on missions that only humans can handle. The strategic reason is manpower. Ukraine is fighting a long war of attrition. And trained soldiers are not just numbers on a chart. They are experience, unit memory, battlefield skill, and survival knowledge. They know how to move under fire, read danger, use cover, coordinate with drones, and survive when plans break down. Losing such people hurts a unit far beyond the immediate casualty count. It weakens the next mission as well. A destroyed robot is still a loss, but it is a different kind of loss. It can be repaired, replaced, redesigned, or produced in a better version. A trained soldier cannot be replaced in the same way, especially under pressure. In a long war, the gap between losing a machine and losing a trained soldier becomes strategic. The more Ukraine can protect experienced infantry from repeated low-value risks, the more it can preserve combat power for missions that truly demand human presence. This is why UGVs should be understood as a force protection tool, not only a weapons platform. Their value is not measured only by what they destroy, it is also measured by what they prevent. They can reduce unnecessary movement under observation. They can limit exposure during routine tasks. They can keep infantry away from jobs where a machine can accept the first risk. That changes the rhythm of war. Instead of treating every dangerous mission as an infantry problem, Ukraine can ask a sharper question. Does this task need a soldier, or does it only need movement, weight, sensors, or remote control? Infantry would remain central, but it would no longer be forced to absorb every dangerous step before the battle reaches its decisive point. And the clearest place to see this manpower logic is not always in large assault missions. It is often in the smaller movements that keep the front alive every day, quietly and constantly. Logistics is where unmanned ground vehicles may create their most immediate impact for Ukraine. A battle is not only decided by who attacks first or who holds the stronger position. It is also decided by who can keep ammunition, water, batteries, radios, food, and medical supplies moving under fire. A trench line can have brave soldiers and strong weapons, but if the supply route breaks, that position weakens quickly. This is why logistics robots matter. They answer one of the hardest questions Ukraine faces every day. How can a frontline unit stay supplied when every route toward it may already be watched? A modern infantryman can carry only a limited amount of equipment. The figure often used is around 20 kilograms. By comparison, some unmanned ground logistics vehicles can move around 200 to 600 kilograms of cargo, depending on the model, terrain, and mission. That difference changes the battlefield math. One robot trip can replace several dangerous human trips. A logistics UGV can bring ammunition forward without forcing soldiers to cross the same exposed route. It can carry drone batteries, radios, water, food, medical supplies, and basic equipment to units that cannot easily move back without being detected. In a war shaped by constant observation, this matters as much as firepower. The front does not only need weapons, it needs flow. If ammunition stops, soldiers cannot hold pressure. If water and food do not arrive, endurance begins to fall. If batteries do not reach drone teams, eyes in the sky begin to close. If medical supplies are delayed, wounds that could be survived may become fatal. And if wounded soldiers cannot be evacuated, morale and combat strength suffer together. Drone warfare has turned logistics into its own battlefield. A supply truck is no longer just a vehicle moving behind the lines. It can become a visible target from above. A small resupply team can be tracked the moment it leaves cover. A repeated route can become a pattern that the enemy studies, waits for, and strikes. This is why UGV logistics is not a side issue. It is part of the fight for endurance. Every robot that carries supplies can reduce the number of soldiers who must expose themselves on predictable routes. Every successful unmanned trip lowers the chance that a routine task becomes another casualty report. The effect may look small in a single movement, but it grows over time. If robots replace thousands of dangerous supply trips, the impact is not only measured in cargo delivered. It is measured in soldiers who did not have to walk into watched ground. It is measured in units that stayed supplied longer. It is measured in positions that remained active because the supply chain did not break. That is why logistics UGVs may become one of Ukraine's most practical tools. They do not need to win a battle alone. They need to keep the people who fight that battle alive, armed, connected, supplied, and able to hold. Once Ukraine proves that robots can carry supplies and help move the wounded, the next step becomes clear. The same ground platforms can begin to observe, hold positions, and provide remote fire support. Ukraine's use of UGVs is no longer limited to moving supplies across dangerous ground. Systems like the TW-12.7 from DevDroid show the next stage of this shift. A ground robot can carry cargo, but it can also carry a weapon. That changes its role from transport platform into a tool that can watch, pressure, and defend a position. The TW-12.7 points to a practical battlefield need. Ukraine needs machines that can bring firepower into places where a human gun team would be too exposed. A Browning machine gun mounted on a UGV does not turn that robot into a tank. It does not replace an infantry fighting vehicle or a squad of trained soldiers. But it gives Ukrainian forces another option. Instead of sending a gun team into a position watched by drones, artillery, snipers, or FPV crews, Ukraine can place a remote-controlled system closer to danger. That is the real value of an armed UGV. It moves risk away from the soldier and places it onto the machine. A machine gun team needs cover, ammunition, observation, and time. But time is dangerous in Ukraine. A firing position that stays active too long can be detected from above. Once detected, it can be hit by mortar fire, artillery, FPV drones, or loitering munitions. A remote fire support platform changes that calculation. The operator can stay farther back while the robot carries the weapon forward. If the enemy discovers the platform, the loss is serious, but it is not the same as losing the crew. This makes armed UGVs useful for holding narrow approaches, watching tree lines, covering trench entrances, or creating pressure near ruined buildings. An armed UGV works best when different tools support each other. A drone above the battlefield can identify movement. An operator can direct the UGV toward a better position. The robot can fire, observe, or force the enemy to react. If the target becomes clear, artillery or FPV drones can follow. Infantry can then hold ground when the situation becomes more controlled. This is why an armed UGV is most effective as part of a kill chain, not as a single wonder weapon. It can create pressure without immediate human exposure. It can make the enemy reveal movement. It can support defensive positions when soldiers need to reduce their visible presence. The wider trend is clear. UGVs are moving from carrier roles toward combat support roles. One platform may carry ammunition. Another may observe, clear mines, evacuate wounded soldiers, or carry a weapon from a distance. This does not mean every UGV will become a fighter. It means the category is expanding into more roles under battlefield pressure. As these machines gain sensors and weapons, the most important change is not only the firepower they bring, it is the growing distance between the soldier and the most dangerous part of the fight. Remote control is one of the most important reasons UGVs matter for Ukraine. The machine can move closer to danger while the operator stays farther away. That changes the relationship between the soldier and the battlefield. The soldier still watches, decides, and controls the system, but his body is no longer at the most exposed point. This shift from physical presence to remote presence is one of the clearest signs of how ground warfare is changing. A UGV can watch an area for long periods. It can sit near a route, a tree line, a trench entrance, or a ruined building. It can carry cameras, sensors, supplies, or weapons. If teams rotate operators from safer positions, the system can keep pressure on an area longer than a small infantry group could do. That matters because fatigue is also a battlefield threat. A soldier who stays too long in a dangerous position becomes easier to detect, easier to target, and slower to react. A robot does not remove every risk, but it gives Ukraine more time and distance. Ukraine has become one of the fastest real war testing grounds for UGVs. The country is not developing these systems slowly in a peaceful laboratory. It is testing them under artillery fire, drone observation, electronic warfare, mud, broken roads, mines, and damaged villages. The UGV market in Ukraine was reported to have grown by 488% in the previous year. That growth is not only about production, it is also about battlefield learning. A unit sends a robot forward. The robot succeeds, gets stuck, loses signal, takes damage, or fails in difficult terrain. That lesson moves back to engineers and manufacturers. The next version can be stronger, simpler, cheaper, or easier to repair. But this new form of warfare also creates serious questions. When weapons are controlled from far away, accountability becomes more complex. Target identification becomes more important. Civilian risk cannot be ignored, especially near villages, roads, or urban ruins. There are also hard technical limits. UGVs still face mud, weak batteries, broken terrain, signal loss, electronic warfare, and capture or destruction. Some reports place combat losses for certain systems at around 10 to 15%. So the story of UGVs is not only a story about a new weapon, it is a story about how ground war is beginning to divide risk differently between humans and machines. Ukraine's ground robot shift does not mean infantry is leaving the battlefield. Soldiers will still hold ground, make final decisions, coordinate close combat, and control positions when the fight becomes too complex for machines. The real change is the first step into danger. If a robot can carry ammunition, scout a route, move a wounded soldier, place sensors, or bring fire support into an exposed area, Ukraine can protect people before the decisive moment begins. UGVs will likely grow fastest in logistics, casualty evacuation, mine clearing, mine laying, and fixed position defense. Robotic assaults will remain harder because terrain, signals, batteries, electronic warfare, and human judgment still set limits. But the direction is clear. Ground war is moving toward a model where humans command from safer distance, while machines absorb the first risk. The soldier is not disappearing, but the most dangerous first step may no longer belong to him. If this analysis helped you understand how modern war is changing, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to Military Force. This channel explains weapons, battles, and geopolitical decisions not to glorify war, but to help viewers understand its real cost. The more clearly we study war, the more seriously we can value peace.